I did that making the best educated choice I could at the time for longevity.
Sure.
And so, I could have trained harder. Like, I trained until shit's, look, I'm here. I gave it hell.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And so because I found those things, like I know how strong this body is as far as a squat. It squats 675. That's the strongest it'll ever be.
That's a lot of weight.
You know how far you can run.
Yeah.
You have a fucking number.
I hit that limit. Yeah, I hit that limit. And that limit was purely physical, which is what inspires me so much, is that I've literally ran till my body collapsed.
I'm fascinated.
Yeah. And it collapsed. And then I ran another 6 miles after that. And that was, I think was the real limit. I was in a really good place at mile 65 mentally.
So 5 miles after that final check with us.
Yep. I was good. I was good at mile 65.
So you're probably an hour after you saw us.
Somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. Maybe a little bit longer.
Okay.
But anyhow, at mile 65, I was feeling really good. My feet had pretty much swollen solid. I wasn't getting any flexion or extension out of my ankles. They were clubs, and every step was just solid. My low back and hamstrings were seizing.
Now, are they painful every step, or are they just solid?
No, they're just solid.
Okay.
Yeah, just solid and heavy.
Yep. Yeah, you know what they're going to do.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. But what was painful was my low back and hamstrings. So every time I would take a step, they would seize. It'd be like when the power dot hits you like on full blast or something, right? So that's kind of what it would feel like.
It's not a tough it out.
No. It was just kind of like
it's mechanical failure.
Yeah. But mentally, I was able to compartmentalize that pain and still be good with where I was in the race, and just knowing that I just got to keep going. But I did come to a point at mile 65 where my body just collapsed. I said, we're done here. We're done. So I kind of like drug myself over to the side of the trail
to let all these fast people go by. Yeah. I'm sure at that point in the night, like, I love that you're still conscious about like, let me move 2 feet out of the way as if we're not in the middle of the desert. Right? Like as if there's nowhere to fucking go.
Yeah. So I pulled myself over, and, I'm like having this conversation with myself, and I'm trying to get my body back on board. And I like pull myself up on top of this rock and like push myself off this rock and get back to my feet, because I realized in this moment at mile 65, when nothing is working physically, that I'm in the middle of nowhere. I'm in the middle of nowhere. It's pitch black. There's nobody around me.
Yeah, you don't have a phone call to make.
And at this point, half of the people that started the race have already
finished or DNF'd or whatever it is.
They've already stopped. So there's 50 people out in the middle of this desert, and I'm 6 miles from the nearest person. And if I'm going to be able to,
at that point, do you calculate how far back to the other one?
I did.
Yeah.
But I'm not going backwards.
Fair enough.
I'm not going back. So I get my body back on board. I push myself up off this rock, and I get through the next 6 miles, and it was even more pain that I had to compartmentalize than the previous miles. But it was just really cool knowing that I think that I pretty much pushed myself until I couldn't go anymore.
No, that to me is what I'm fascinated by.
Yeah.
Because it's that metric. Now you're a runner.
Yeah.
And one of the metrics, how fast can you run?
Right.
How fast can you run a mile? Like you've got a lot of metrics to figure out. What's your 5K time? What's a 10K? What's all these things?
Yes.
But one of those metrics is max distance.
And I think I found it.
And even that's weird too, because now there's so many variables. That's max distance in the desert on that day.
Sure. On that day.
Sure. Right. Yeah. Right. Like what's the max distance you could sit there and probably plow out there on the True Form runner?
Yeah.
If I just kept feeding you snacks and food, sure. It's like, who fucking knows, right?
I'd be there all week.
But you found that mentally you can go until the machine stops.
Yes.
It's not a toughness thing at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was a really cool thing for me, because I think that throughout the course of my life, I've been in a lot of those situations where I've pushed myself to the point of trying to figure out what I'm capable of. And every time that I do, it gives me a little bit more of a push to go and try it somewhere else, or to try it more in depth. And being in that situation at mile 71 and just knowing that I'm now physically incapable of finishing this race, it sucked in the moment. And you remember that.
So that mile 65 is when it hit you that like, oh, we're not going to make it.
No, actually I was actually like, okay, I just need to get my body back on board. When I got to mile 71, I was at the aid station.
Right.
And when I sat down at the aid station and was eating some top ramen and everything, and I went to get back up, I couldn't move. And I was only in that chair for a couple of minutes waiting and eating that top ramen.
Just everything had ceased.
But I could not stand for anything. Like I was trying to push myself out of the chair. My arms worked, but like I couldn't put any weight into my legs.
What a weird feeling.
It was very weird. It was like I was like cemented in concrete. And it was really disheartening at the time.
Well, there's a weird disconnect because like just stand up.
Yeah, right? Like you've move your little 1,000 times right? over the course of the past couple of days leading up to this moment. Why can't you do it right now? But there's just something about running those kinds of distances and putting yourselves in those situations to just be in complete pain and suffering that is so peaceful. And that's something that I took from that is being in those moments of suffering. It was one of the most enjoyable moments of my entire life.